On my birthday, my grandpa smiled and asked, "Is the apartment comfortable?" I said, "What apartment?" My parents froze. He glared at them. "Then where did the money go?" All right, Reddit. I'm 25 male. One question at my birthday cracked a 3-year paper trail. $275,000 diverted, and my trust compromised. I used patience, lawyers, and receipts. It's chaos, but the good kind. Get your popcorn, enjoy, and don't you dare skip. This mess deserves your full attention. It started at the table, right after my grandpa asked. The silence stretched long enough for me to notice things I'd been ignoring all evening. The dining room table was set with plates I'd never seen before. Heavy ceramic, the kind with little maker's marks on the bottom that screamed rental company. Mom had arranged flowers in a vase that still had a price sticker half peeled off the base. She'd been buzzing around all night like a Broadway stage manager, adjusting napkins and checking her watch. "Isn't this wonderful, Nick? All your favorite people in one place." Her smile was tight as shrink wrap. Dad stood behind his chair, gripping the back like it might float away. His face had gone the color of wet concrete. Grandpa waited. He's always been good at waiting. Built a fortune on patience, knowing when to speak and when to let other people fill the silence with truth. "What apartment?" I repeated, looking between my parents. Mom's laugh came out forced. "Oh, you know how he gets confused sometimes. Don't you, Dad?" She shot Grandpa a look that could have cut glass. Grandpa's expression didn't change. At 78, he still had the same steady gaze that probably made boardrooms sweat. "I sent $275,000 8 months ago. For Nick's apartment at Harborview Towers. Prepaid rent, furniture allowance, security deposit. I wanted everything ready before his trust fund vested." The words hit the room like a dropped anvil. My sister Amelia shifted in her chair. She'd been checking her phone half the night. Now she looked up with genuine confusion. "What trust fund?" she asked. I was wondering the same thing. There was a guy standing near the kitchen doorway I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, wearing a suit that fit too well for a family birthday party. He'd been nursing the same glass of water for an hour, watching everything with the quiet attention of someone taking mental notes. Mom laughed again, higher pitched this time. "Dad, you're making Nick nervous with all this talk. Let's just enjoy the party." "Where's the apartment key, Diane?" Grandpa's voice stayed level, but something underneath had shifted, like hearing ice crack on a lake. Dad finally found his voice. "We were going to tell him. We just thought—" "You thought what?" Grandpa asked. "That he didn't need to know about his own money?" The kitchen was full of food from different places. Grocery store cake next to catered appetizers. Even the birthday decorations seemed like an afterthought. Balloons from the dollar store tied to chairs that belonged in a different house. I'd been living in the same studio apartment for 2 years. The radiator clanged, the bathroom door stuck, and I could hear Mrs. Klein's cat scratching at the walls at 3 in the morning. If someone had offered me a place downtown, I would have packed that same day. "Nick?" Grandpa turned to me. "Grab your jacket." Mom stepped forward. "Dad, please, can't we just sit down and talk about this like adults?" "We could have talked about it 8 months ago," Grandpa said. "Or 6 months ago. Or last week. Or any time before right now." The stranger by the kitchen raised his eyebrows slightly, like he was watching a chess match, and someone had just made an interesting move. Dad's hands were shaking now. "We can explain everything. We just need some time to—" "Time's up," Grandpa said quietly. I looked around the table. At the rented plates and borrowed chairs. At Amelia, who was staring at her phone like it might explain what was happening. At my parents, who suddenly looked like strangers wearing my parents' faces. My jacket was hanging on a chair by the door. I grabbed it and followed Grandpa toward the exit. "Nick, wait!" Mom's voice cracked. "Please, this is your birthday party." I stopped and looked back at her. At the performance she'd put together like she was directing a play I'd never auditioned for. "No," I said. "This is your party." I was just the excuse. The front door closed behind us with a soft click. Outside, Grandpa's Camry sat in the driveway next to a black SUV I'd never seen before. The kind of vehicle that screamed, borrowed from someone trying to impress. "Get in," Grandpa said, fishing keys from his pocket. "We need to talk." The Camry's interior smelled like coffee and leather polish. Grandpa drove like he did everything else. Steady, deliberate, no wasted motion. He took the highway downtown without asking where I wanted to go. "That man at the party," I said. "By the kitchen. Riley Kane. He used to hunt financial crimes for the IRS. Grandpa changed lanes with the precision of someone who'd been driving the same routes for decades. Now he works for me." We pulled into the underground garage of Harborview Towers. Grandpa handed me a key fob from his glove compartment. It was already programmed with my name. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor happened in silence. I watched the numbers climb and tried to process what was happening. 2 hours ago, I'd been eating grocery store cake and wondering if I should finally replace my broken microwave. Apartment 3204 opened to a view that made me stop walking. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Mississippi River. The city spread out below like a circuit board, all precise lines and glowing connections. I'd installed security systems in buildings like this, but never imagined living in one. The furniture was exactly what I would have picked if I'd had money and taste. Clean lines, comfortable without being flashy. Someone had done their research. A gym membership card sat on the kitchen counter, still sealed in its envelope. The date stamp read, 8 months ago. Right around the time my parents started driving newer cars. The adhesive strip on the back was still tacky when I peeled it. The baseboards showed no dust accumulation. I checked the router. The label matched the apartment number on my key fob sticker. Window locks turned smoothly, recently oiled. Warranty cards for all the appliances sat unregistered in kitchen drawers, organized by purchase date. The pantry was stocked like a showroom. Everything lined up with labels facing out, brand names I recognized but couldn't usually afford. It looked staged, like someone had followed a checklist rather than actually grocery shopping. I opened a few drawers, silverware still in packaging. This place had been waiting for me since before I knew it existed. $275,000, Grandpa said from the living room. Prepaid rent for 2 years, furniture allowance, security deposits. I wanted you settled somewhere decent before your trust fund kicked in. Trust fund. Another piece of information that had somehow never made it to me. How much? I asked. $760,000. It vested on your 25th birthday. His voice carried the weight of bad news still coming. Should have, anyway. I did the math. My birthday was 3 weeks ago. The money should have been mine by now. But it's not. Someone's been borrowing against it for years. Your parents had banking connections, found ways to access the principal early. Grandpa moved to the windows, hands behind his back. Riley's been tracking the paper trail. He notices things other people miss. Finds financial traces most investigators walk right past. I opened the refrigerator, empty except for a welcome basket with cheese, crackers, and a bottle of imported sparkling water that probably cost more than my usual grocery budget. How much is left? I asked. Maybe $30,000, if we're lucky. I stood in the kitchen of an apartment I couldn't afford, looking at food I hadn't bought, holding a gym membership I'd never signed up for. The whole situation felt like walking into someone else's life, but the anger wasn't coming yet. Instead, I felt something colder. My parents had stolen my future and smiled at my birthday party. They'd borrowed money meant for me and bought themselves new lives with it. The performance tonight had been their way of keeping the lie going for another few hours. Riley thinks we can get it back, I asked. Most of it, maybe all of it, depending on what assets they still have. Grandpa turned from the windows. But it'll take time. Legal processes, financial recovery, criminal charges if we push that direction. How long? Months. I walked to the master bedroom. King-size bed with hotel crisp sheets, dresser drawers that slid like they were on ball bearings. Everything untouched. You want me to stay here tonight? I want you to think about what comes next, Grandpa said. Away from them. I looked around the bedroom that was supposed to have been mine for 8 months. The closet was empty except for hangers spaced at perfect intervals. Okay, I said. Grandpa nodded and headed for the door. Riley will call you tomorrow. He'll walk you through the legal options. After he left, I stood in the center of the living room looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, my parents were probably sitting at their dining room table with the rented plates, trying to figure out how to explain what couldn't be explained. I walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt. The sound was satisfying in a way that surprised me, like drawing a line in the sand, but quieter. Riley showed up at 9 the next morning with coffee and a briefcase. He moved through the apartment like he was cataloging evidence, which I guess he was. Your grandfather filled me in on the basics, he said, setting up his laptop on the dining table. But we need to dig deeper. Grandpa arrived 20 minutes later, carrying pastries from somewhere that probably didn't take credit cards. He settled into the chair by the windows and let Riley run the meeting. Riley pulled up bank records on his screen. Columns of numbers, dates, transaction codes that looked like alphabet soup to most people. To him, they told stories. The trust was structured to vest automatically on your 25th birthday. $760,000, managed by Northfield Corporate Trust. Riley scrolled through pages of financial data. Someone's been impersonating you for almost 3 years. He showed me forged correspondence. Letters requesting early distributions, signed with my name in handwriting that wasn't mine. Phone calls made from numbers registered to addresses I'd never lived at. The banker who approved these should have called you directly for verification, Riley said. It's standard protocol for early distributions. Instead, he accepted callback numbers provided by the impersonator. The negligence was almost impressive in its completeness. How much is gone? I asked. Hard to say exactly. The trust shows multiple distributions over the past 36 months. Total of 640,000 withdrawn so far. I did the math. That left maybe 120,000, assuming they hadn't found ways to grab more. We need to move fast, Riley continued. File identity theft claims. Freeze everything we can. Create a legal paper trail that stops them from accessing anything else. He handed me a printed list. Federal Trade Commission identity theft affidavit. Credit Bureau freezes with all 3 agencies. Bank fraud reports to the institutions involved. Police complaint with Minneapolis PD. You'll need to do most of this yourself, Riley said. I can guide you through it, but the reports need to come directly from you. I spent the next 4 hours on phone calls and government websites. The FTC affidavit was straightforward once I figured out their system. Credit freezes were easier. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion all had online portals designed for exactly this situation. Each freeze locked down my credit profile like closing a vault. The bank fraud reports required more patience. Each institution wanted their own documentation, their own forms, their own version of the same story. Minneapolis PD was the most tedious. The fraud detective assigned to my case sounded like he'd handled 1,000 similar complaints. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia around lunchtime. Mom's crying. Dad won't come out of his room. What's happening? I stared at the message for a few minutes, but I did not respond. Riley made more calls while I worked through the paperwork. He spoke to people in the kind of shorthand that suggested long professional relationships. Former colleagues, probably. Your parents made mistakes, he said, after hanging up his third call. Use the stolen money for traceable purchases. Credit card payments, home improvements, car loans. They left digital breadcrumbs everywhere. Grandpa sat quietly through most of this, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the important details. He'd built his fortune by understanding money flows and risk management. By 4 o'clock, we had a foundation. Identity theft claims filed, credit frozen, banks notified, police reports submitted, everything documented and time-stamped. Now we need legal leverage, Riley said, closing his laptop. Civil remedies, asset protection, maybe criminal charges depending on how aggressive you want to get. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. James? It's Riley Kane. I need an appointment for tomorrow morning. Client matter, urgent. He listened for a moment. Nick Aldridge, grandson of Edward Aldridge. Trust fund fraud. Family perpetrators. The conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds. Riley hung up and made a note in his calendar. James Marlowe, your grandfather's attorney. He specializes in exactly this kind of situation. Criminal charges? I asked. Riley's expression didn't change. That's tomorrow's conversation, but the evidence is solid. Your parents committed wire fraud, identity theft, probably bank fraud too. The question is whether you want to prosecute family. I looked out the window at the city below. Then without hesitation, schedule the meeting, I said. Riley spread bank statements across the dining table like he was dealing cards. 3 years of financial records, printed and sorted by date. We need to build a ledger, Riley said, opening a fresh spreadsheet on his laptop. Every transaction, every dollar, every timestamp. Let the evidence tell the story. He showed me how to trace money flows. Trust distributions appeared in my parents' checking account within days of each forged request. From there, the funds moved in predictable patterns. Credit card payments, home improvement contractors, luxury purchases they couldn't have afforded on Dad's electrician's salary. Riley marked each entry with color codes. He cross-referenced merchant category codes against timestamp clusters that matched Dad's worksite hours. Device fingerprints from Dad's phone showed consistent browser signatures accessing the trust portal during lunch breaks. The digital pattern was damning. Look at this. Riley pointed to a cluster of transactions from 18 months ago. $37,000 to Bergen's Fine Furniture. The same week, your mom posted Instagram photos of her new dining room set. More patterns emerged as we worked. Cosmetic medical spa packages for mom. $22,000 for procedures spread over 6 months. A landscaping retainer that transformed their backyard. A $15,000 donation to the private school Amelia never attended. Riley pulled up card transaction logs. Your dad's been sloppy with his digital footprint. Look at these timestamps. The trust portal access logs showed logins from Dad's IP address at home, always during his lunch breaks from work sites. His phone had accessed the account portal 47 times over 3 years. Same device fingerprint every time. He reused email variants for the fake accounts, Riley continued. markaldridge.business@gmail.com, maldridge.enterprises@yahoo.com, markaldridge.llc@hotmail.com. Amateur hour. The dummy company was almost insulting in its transparency. Aldridge Lifestyle Services, LLC, registered in Delaware with Dad as the managing member. They'd used it to buy business fixtures that showed up in Mom's social media posts. Kitchen appliances, patio furniture, a hot tub that definitely wasn't for business purposes. We built exhibits like assembling a prosecution case. Bank PDFs with transactions highlighted in yellow. Screenshots of social media posts with purchase dates annotated. Merchant receipts that Riley had somehow tracked down through his network of financial investigators. The timeline was damning in its completeness. Trust distribution requests followed by immediate spending sprees. Forged signatures that didn't match my actual handwriting. Phone calls to the trust company made from numbers registered to addresses where I'd never lived. Your parents created a paper trail that connects every dot, Riley said, printing another stack of evidence. Wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud. The prosecutor won't even need to work hard. My phone buzzed with another text from Amelia. Can you please just call Mom? She says there's been a misunderstanding. I screenshot the message and added it to our evidence folder. One more thing, Riley said, pulling up a final spreadsheet. Asset recovery projections. He'd calculated current values for everything my parents had purchased with stolen money. Cars they couldn't sell without triggering the asset freeze. Home improvements that became part of the house's equity. Luxury items that depreciated the moment they left the store. Recovery rate depends on how aggressive we get, Riley explained. Civil restitution might get you 60 to 70%. Criminal prosecution with asset forfeiture could recover closer to 90%. But it means your parents face federal charges. The numbers stared back at me from the laptop screen. $760,000 at stake. Maybe $500,000 recoverable, if we played it smart. Riley started zipping files onto a flash drive. Digital exhibits, scanned documents, annotated timelines. Everything organized like a federal case ready for prosecution. James Marlowe likes thorough preparation, Riley said. He'll want to see every angle before he decides how to proceed. I printed backup copies of the key exhibits. Bank statements, trust portal logs, merchant receipts. The evidence made a stack 3 inches thick. We worked until nearly midnight, building a case that felt more like accounting than revenge. Numbers don't lie, and my parents had left numbers everywhere. Riley packed his laptop and briefcase. Meetings at 9 tomorrow morning. Marlowe's office downtown. After he left, I arranged the printed exhibits in a neat folder by the front door. Digital copies on the flash drive. Physical backups in chronological order. The apartment felt different now. Less like a crime scene, more like a command center. I powered down the laptop and turned off the lights. Tomorrow, we'd give James Marlowe everything he needed to decide whether my parents deserved prosecution or just civil destruction. Either way, the receipts were ready. James Marlowe's office occupied 2 floors of a building that had probably been impressive when it was built in the 1980s. Marlowe himself looked like Central Casting's idea of a corporate attorney. Gray suit, steel-rimmed glasses, the kind of handshake that suggested he'd close deals worth more than most people's houses. Riley spread our exhibits across the conference table. 3 years of evidence arranged like a legal brief. Marlowe studied each document with the attention of someone who'd built his career on details other lawyers missed. Wire fraud, identity theft, conversion of trust assets, Marlowe said, making notes on a legal pad. Your parents weren't subtle. He outlined the strategy in the same tone he might have used to discuss lunch plans. Temporary restraining order first, filed within the hour. Asset freeze on their bank accounts, investment portfolios, anything we could identify as purchased with stolen funds. Prejudgment writ of attachment on specific accounts, Marlowe continued. We'll freeze their assets before they know we're coming. Once the court grants the TRO, they can't sell, transfer, or hide anything significant. Discovery requests would follow. Court-ordered financial audits, subpoenas for banking records, depositions under oath. Marlowe's firm had a forensic accounting team that specialized in exactly this kind of asset recovery. Criminal charges? Riley asked. Possible. Both state and federal prosecutors would have strong cases here. Marlowe closed the evidence folder. But today is about stopping further losses and securing what's left to recover. Riley walked me through testimony prep. Facts only. Dates, amounts, specific transactions. Marlowe wanted me to sound like an accountant, not a victim. They'll ask about your relationship with your parents, Riley said. Keep it simple. We're not close, I practiced. They'll ask if you knew about the trust fund. I found out 3 days ago. They'll ask if you authorized any early distributions. Number I never spoke to anyone at the trust company. Marlowe nodded. While they finalized court filings, I spent an hour securing everything my parents might have accessed, changed passwords on every account, enabled two-factor authentication, redirected mail to Harborview, set up account alerts, locked my SIM card with a PIN. Grandpa arrived while Marlowe's paralegal was filing our emergency motions electronically. He reviewed the paperwork with the same attention he'd probably given merger documents 40 years ago. "We do this clean," he said, signing where Marlowe indicated. "No public drama, no media circus. Just the law doing what it's supposed to do." The court clerk's office confirmed our hearing for the following afternoon. Judge Pamela, Commercial Division, Hennepin County District Court. Marlowe knew her reputation. Thorough, no-nonsense, skeptical of family financial disputes, but fair when the evidence was clear. "She'll want to see bank records, not sob stories," Marlowe warned. "Your parents' lawyers will probably argue this is a family misunderstanding. Pamela won't buy it if we stick to the numbers." Riley packed up his briefcase with satisfaction. Marlowe's team would handle the legal mechanics from here. My part was simpler. Show up tomorrow, answer questions honestly, let the evidence speak for itself. I stopped at a grocery store and bought ingredients for dinner. Chicken, rice, vegetables I could actually pronounce. My phone stayed quiet for the first time in days. No texts from Amelia, no calls from unknown numbers. My parents were probably meeting with their own attorney by now, trying to figure out how to explain 36 months of theft to a judge. I ate dinner watching the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Tomorrow there would be a hearing, legal arguments, probably some kind of confrontation with people who used to be my family. Tonight there was just food that tasted right and a place that felt like it might actually be home. I went to bed at 10:30 and slept 8 hours straight. No dreams, no interruptions. Just rest. The Hennepin County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and bureaucracy. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh brightness. My dress shoes clicked on scuffed marble floors that had seen decades of people walking toward judgment. Marlowe carried our exhibits in a leather briefcase. Riley walked beside me with the calm confidence of someone who'd testified in federal court before breakfast. My parents sat at the respondents' table with their attorney, a woman in her 50s who looked like she specialized in damage control. Dad stared at his hands. Mom kept glancing toward the door like she was hoping for a fire drill. Amelia sat in the gallery behind them, wearing the same expression she'd had during high school math tests she hadn't studied for. Judge Pamela took the bench at exactly 2 o'clock. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with the kind of direct gaze that probably made lawyers reconsider their opening statements. Marlowe presented our case like he was reading financial earnings to shareholders. Exhibits A through R, bank records highlighted and tabbed, trust portal access logs printed in chronological order. Each document told part of the story, but together they painted a picture that didn't require interpretation. "Trust distributions requested through forged correspondence," Marlowe explained, pointing to signature comparisons projected on a courtroom screen. 36 separate instances of identity theft over 3 years. Total fraudulent distributions of $640,000. The judge studied each exhibit. She asked precise questions about banking protocols, verification procedures, the corporate trustees' failure to follow their own security policies. Marlowe called me to testify. The witness stand felt like sitting in a spotlight. I kept my answers short and factual, the way Riley had coached me. "Did you authorize any early distributions from your trust fund?" "No." "Did you ever communicate with Northfield Corporate Trust before this week?" "No." "Have you ever lived at the addresses used for callback verification?" "No." "Did you know about these distributions before your birthday party?" "No." The parents' attorney tried to complicate things during cross-examination. She asked about family relationships, past financial support, whether I'd ever expressed interest in early access to trust funds. "Isn't it possible your parents believed they had your permission? They forged my signature 36 times. But you never explicitly told them not to." "I didn't know the trust existed." Marlowe's redirect was surgical. Device fingerprints from Dad's phone accessing the trust portal. IP address logs showing access from their home network during Dad's lunch breaks. Timestamps connecting forged distribution requests to immediate luxury purchases. The parents' attorney had no good answers for digital evidence that tied every fraudulent request directly to my father's devices. Judge Pamela reviewed the exhibits during a 15-minute recess. When she returned, her ruling was efficient and comprehensive. Temporary restraining order granted. My parents were prohibited from accessing, transferring, or disposing of any assets purchased with trust fund distributions. Asset freeze on their primary banking accounts investment portfolios, and credit lines. Anything funded with stolen money was now locked down pending final judgment. Court-ordered financial audit by Marlowe's forensic accounting team. Complete asset inventory, transaction analysis, recovery projections. My parents would have to open their entire financial history to professional scrutiny. Pre-judgment writ of attachment on specific accounts Riley had identified. The court would hold those funds in escrow until restitution was determined. Discovery deadlines set for 4 weeks out. My parents had a month to produce 3 years of financial records, banking statements, and purchase receipts. This court is not interested in family drama, Pamela said, looking directly at both legal teams. The evidence shows systematic identity theft and conversion of trust assets. The civil remedies will proceed based on financial facts, not emotional appeals. She scheduled the next hearing for 6 weeks out and dismissed the session. My parents' attorney immediately huddled with them near the respondent's table. Dad looked like he was aging in real time. Mom dabbed at her eyes with tissues that weren't hiding much. Amelia finally looked in my direction as we filed out of the courtroom. For a moment, her expression shifted from defensive confusion to something that might have been regret. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it and followed our parents toward the exit. Marlowe shook hands with opposing counsel in the hallway, exchanging professional pleasantries that suggested this was just business to both of them. Criminal charges? I asked as we walked toward the elevators. The evidence supports both state and federal prosecution, Marlowe replied. Wire fraud, identity theft, conversion of assets. But that's a separate decision. Today was about preserving what's left to recover. Riley was already calculating next steps. Asset recovery projections, timeline for full restitution, coordination with the forensic accountants who'd execute the court-ordered audit. Your parents made this easier by keeping detailed records of their spending, he said. Most fraud cases require months of investigation to trace the money. They basically provided their own evidence outside the courthouse. So what happens now? I asked. Riley adjusted his tie. Now we wait. The court orders will hit their accounts by end of business today. The audit team starts Monday. Your parents have 4 weeks to produce financial records they probably wish they'd shredded. Marlowe was already checking his phone for messages, probably from other clients with other problems that required surgical legal solutions. Recovery timeline? I asked. 6 to 8 months for full restitution, Marlowe said. Maybe less if they cooperate with the audit. Maybe more if they fight every subpoena. I looked back at the courthouse steps. 6 months ago, I hadn't known I had a trust fund. 6 months from now, I'd probably have most of it back. Now we wait, Riley repeated. That sounded about right. The asset freeze hit my parents' accounts like a digital avalanche. Credit cards declined at gas stations, automatic bill payments paused mid-cycle, login attempts flagged and logged for the audit trail. Every financial interaction became evidence of the theft they'd thought they could hide forever. 6 months later, the court-ordered audit was finally complete. Riley's forensic accounting team had traced every dollar with the precision of tax investigators. The final report was 200 pages of financial archaeology that left no transaction unexplained. Our preliminary total had been $640,000. The audit found another $33,000 hidden as fees and vendor credits. Restitution was set at $673,000, plus interest and legal fees. My parents' house would be sold to satisfy part of the judgment. Their retirement accounts, already frozen, would cover another chunk. The luxury items they'd bought with stolen money would be liquidated through court-supervised sales. The bureaucracy moved at government speed. Asset appraisals, court approvals, liquidation schedules that stretched weeks into months. Justice wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. Dad's electrical contractor dropped him from their preferred vendor list. Mom's country club quietly suggested she might be more comfortable at a different facility. Their neighbor, Mrs. Carver, who used to wave from her garden, now just looked the other way when they passed. I didn't take satisfaction in their social exile, but I didn't feel sorry for them either. The Unlocked project started small. Riley mentioned it to a veteran whose GI Bill education benefits had been hijacked by relatives who'd gained access to his accounts during a deployment. Same pattern as my case. Identity theft, forged documents, family members who thought they deserved money that wasn't theirs. I helped him navigate the VA bureaucracy, file the right forms, freeze the right accounts. We filed the fraud report through the VA's online portal, updated his direct deposit information to a new account, enabled two-factor authentication on all his education portals, and set up alerts for any changes to his benefit status. The confirmation call came 6 weeks later. Benefits restored, back payments issued, relatives facing federal charges. The work felt useful in a way that installing security cameras never had. My boundaries were simple. Forgiveness didn't equal access. I could let go of anger without letting destructive people back into my life. Some relationships cost more than they returned. Work routines had settled. Contract IT projects during the day. Unlocked project cases in the evenings. Financial planning on weekends. I'd learned to read banking regulations the way other people read sports scores. The Harbor View apartment felt like home now instead of a crime scene. I'd replaced the staged pantry items with food I actually cooked. Added books to shelves that had been decoratively empty. The gym membership finally got some use. My phone still buzzed with occasional messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Mom trying different approaches to re-establish contact. Dad sending apologies that sounded like they'd been drafted by their attorney. I read them and did not respond. Amelia's messages stopped completely after the court hearing. Radio silence for 6 months, which felt like progress compared to the guilt trips and family loyalty lectures she'd tried initially. Then last week, an envelope appeared under my apartment door. Inside was my birth certificate, the original one from the hospital, not a copy from the county clerk, along with my social security card, vaccination records, and my high school diploma. Documents that had been stored at my parents' house for years. No note, no explanation, just the papers I'd need to completely separate my life from theirs. Amelia must have taken them during one of her visits home, probably while Mom was upstairs crying and Dad was staring at financial documents he couldn't undo. She'd found a job in Portland, according to her LinkedIn profile, marketing coordinator for a nonprofit that helped homeless veterans, far enough from Minneapolis to avoid the family wreckage, useful enough work to maybe sleep better at night. I filed the documents in my desk drawer next to the insurance policies and investment statements that represented an actual future instead of stolen money. The restitution payments would start next month. Structured settlements, liquidation proceeds, garnished wages from Dad's new job installing basic electrical work for half his previous rate. The money would trickle back over time, not in dramatic lump sums, but it would come back. All of it, plus interest. Riley had been right about one thing. My parents weren't smart enough to steal money without leaving evidence everywhere. The same sloppiness that made the theft easy to prove also made the recovery straightforward. I kept the birth certificate on my desk for a few days, thinking about what Amelia's gesture meant. Not reconciliation, probably. Maybe just recognition that some bridges needed to stay burned, while others could be quietly rebuilt from a safe distance. Either way, she'd made the right choice. The documents were mine, after all. Then, the inevitable conversation happened, and it was delicious. The lobby intercom buzzed on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing case files for the unlocked project, building security with their polite but firm voice. My parents were downstairs asking to see me. I could have told security to send them away, could have pretended I wasn't home, let them stand in the marble lobby until they got tired and left. Instead, I took the elevator down. They looked smaller in the Harbor View lobby than they had at the courthouse. Dad's work clothes were clean but worn, the kind of durable clothing that suggested steady employment at reduced wages. Mom had lost weight and the expensive highlights she used to maintain. The restitution payments had been hitting their accounts for 2 months now. Structured settlements from asset liquidation, garnished wages, retirement fund distributions approved by the court. The money was coming back exactly as Riley had projected. Nick, Mom started, then stopped like she'd forgotten her prepared speech. The payments are on schedule, I said. If there's a problem with the court order, contact Marlowe's office. We wanted to talk, Dad said, about maybe trying again, as a family. I looked at them standing in the lobby of the building they'd unknowingly paid for with stolen money. The irony felt appropriate but not satisfying. The restitution continues per the court schedule, I said. That's the extent of our relationship. Mom's eyes went red around the edges, but she didn't cry. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. You were my parents. Now you're people who owe me money. Riley appeared near the building's entrance, probably arriving for our evening meeting about a new case. He stayed by the windows, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to avoid escalating the situation. Grandpa materialized from the direction of the parking garage, moving with the quiet purpose that had probably unnerved business rivals for decades. He nodded to me and took a seat in one of the lobby's leather chairs, within earshot but not participating. We can pay you back faster than the court ordered, Dad offered. I'm working extra jobs. Mom's looking for... You had 3 years to manage money responsibly, I interrupted. You chose to manage other people's futures with borrowed money instead. The words came out colder than I'd intended, but they were accurate. Dad's shoulders sagged. We were protecting you from making mistakes with that much money. By stealing it and buying yourselves a lifestyle upgrade? No answer to that. Mom tried a different approach. Could we maybe have coffee sometime? Just to talk? No keys, no codes, no surprise visits, I said. No phone calls, no family dinners, no attempts to reestablish contact. The court schedule handles everything that needs handling between us. Nick, please. This conversation is over. I pressed the elevator call button and waited. The lobby stayed quiet except for the soft hum of climate control and the distant sound of traffic outside. The elevator arrived with its polite chime. I stepped inside and pressed 32. The apartment's comfortable, Mom said as the doors started to close. Isn't it? The doors sealed shut before I could answer. Riley was waiting when I got back to the apartment, along with case files for a college student whose grandmother had been siphoning her scholarship funds. Grandpa arrived 10 minutes later with takeout from the Vietnamese place downtown. We ate in the dining room while reviewing the new case. 3 generations of men who understood that some problems required patience and others required lawyers. After they left, I stood on the balcony watching the city lights flicker on below. The apartment felt quiet around me. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia. Saw them in the lobby on the security feed. You okay? I typed back. Fine. Thanks for the documents last month. Welcome. Take care of yourself. The balcony door closed behind. Is the apartment comfortable? Now it is.